Last time on this channel, we took a look at Sega's answer to The Legend of Zelda, with Golden Axe Warrior for the Master System, but that wasn't the only spin-off in the series that dropped in 1991 in Japan, 92 for North America, and PAL regions. This is Axbattler, a Legend of Golden Axe for the Sega Game Gear. Released by Sega and developed by Aspect Co., this game follows our main man from the original Golden Axe game, Axbattler, as he makes his way across the world to defeat Death Adder. There's a lot going for this game. The visuals are bright, detailed, and appealing, as you travel from a traditional RPG perspective across a variety of terrain. Where it differs is in the combat sequences, which are handled in these one-on-one fighting arenas, from a 2D, side-scrolling, action perspective. These occur randomly as you traverse the map, and very frequently, very frequently, as you can clearly see here. If you're just looking at this and not playing it, you'll likely get a bit of a Zelda 2 vibe, with bits of Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest nuggets. But the gameplay in these side view segments feels more like ActRaiser, Rastan, or the legendary Axe. Only worse. Axbattler handles well enough, but his movements are a bit slow and enemies tend to come at you quickly. Let's start with the one-on-one overworld encounters first. As I just said, they pop up very frequently, oftentimes after a step or two, but that's not really my problem with this game, despite it clearly being a way for these developers to pad out the length of the overall experience. In these skirmishes, you'll come up against one of about a half a dozen different enemy types. The variety is bumped up a notch in the later areas, where you'll be taking on palette swaps of the same baddies, with different movesets, which is pretty RPG-ish. These encounters are random, so you'll never know what you're going to be dealt, and, for the most part, I really like the way they are designed. Despite having a life bar at the bottom, you can only take one hit here, and failing to dispose of an enemy will pop you back out to the bird's eye overworld view. For a first-time player, this can get rather frustrating since nearly every opponent requires a specific tactic to take down. What's good is that you'll infrequently get lost while moving from set piece to set piece. The NPCs are very clear about where you need to go, and geographically, the world isn't very large, so you'll normally just need to beeline it towards the next objective. There are villages in between the main beats where you can gather passwords, rest at inns to refill your life, and, most importantly, enter training grounds in order to learn new skills. These TG houses pit you up against an enemy with the same movesets as the ones you'll randomly happen upon throughout the game, but they have larger health bars. What I like is that these fights essentially teach you how to learn the patterns of new enemies introduced in each area, which is good, since you only get one shot at them in the wild. Successfully completing these challenges will give Axbattler new abilities, such as a high jump, downward thrust, and a hip check charging attack. Some of these enemies, such as the skeletons and bad bras, will initially take a while to master, but after you've memorized their patterns, they become pretty easy. They can seem rather daunting at first, but once you've figured them out, it's a cakewalk, since they don't really switch up their offensive strategies at all. 2 of the 3 early game baddies can be eliminated simply by ducking and spamming the action button, for instance, but by the second area, you'll need to be a bit more clever. My favorites to take on are the Knights and the Death Adders. The former requires you to wait until a specific moment to strike, and the latter is interesting due to the amount of offensive moves he has in his arsenal. And yes, you'll be forced to fight Death Adder more than once here. I won't spoil anything, but the end of the game is underwhelming as a result. For skilled players, the game can be beaten in about an hour. On my first playthrough, I saw the end credits after about 90 minutes, and that was with me taking my time to learn the mechanics and locations. There aren't a lot of areas to visit, and the entire experience basically boils down to visiting a town, learning a new skill, figuring out an enemy's patterns, then moving on to a longer, side-scrolling action platformer set piece. These include caves, a pyramid, a snowy region, and a forest. There are a few nods to the main series, with one in particular that has Axbattler riding a giant turtle across the waters. These are all pretty mediocre, if I'm being honest. They're not bad per se, but they do require a certain amount of trial and error to overcome, primarily due to the large character sprites and how crammed everything feels into the small screen real estate. Your dude also has the tendency to be too close to the side of the screen, which results in a lot of enemies just popping up. It forces you to take things slow, gradually inching the screen along. There are far too many blind jumps as well, with foes lying in the wait. It's clunky, awkward, and shoddily designed, if I'm being honest, with some pretty underdeveloped enemy patterns and a fair share of bad placements. Like, I know this is a spin-off and everything, but this is a goldenaxe game, and as such, the combat should just be better all around, particularly in these longer action scenes. They are pretty brief and not all that challenging, but they could have been handled a lot more competently. What's worse is that there is no way to pause the game during these larger areas, which is unacceptable for a handheld experience. Yeah, I get it, the Game Gear has a limited amount of buttons, so one of them needed to be used for casting magic, but still, you need to be able to pause on the go, axbattler. I mean, figure it out, man. The magic vases from the core series and Goldenaxe Warrior return here in Axbattler. They can be used to unleash a spell in the action scenarios, but they also act as currency in towns. The only way to replenish life is to stay overnight at an inn, so you'll want to make sure you have a certain amount of vases before you visit a village. Enemies drop them during the overworld encounters, so you should always have a stockpile, unless you're spamming magic all of the time, which you really shouldn't have to do. From the RPG perspective, you'll be able to bring up a menu which enables you to talk to townsfolk, interact with the environments, and use items. It's kinda cool, I guess, but during my 3 or 4 playthroughs, I didn't find any secrets by using the search option. I mean, yeah, there's one place where I needed to use it in order to obtain a quest item, but outside of that, it's a useless mechanic that could have been developed a bit more. It's quite possible that I missed some stuff, but I honestly feel like I spent enough time canvassing the land and I came up with nothing. Axbattler is very much all about going from one place to the next in order to obtain an item that unlocks another region. It's a very linear, rudimentary experience at the end of the day, but I'm oddly kinda smitten with it. Like I said, the platforming and combat can feel rather clunky, and things get repetitive, but there's just something about it that I find fun. At the end of the day, I wouldn't recommend it for anything more than a few bucks, but it's a passable little oddity in my books. And by passable, I mean I'd barely give it a D. It's a short, fairly uninspired experience and way too linear for an adventure game, but it also sports some pretty clean visuals and an excellent soundtrack, with some hit numbers by Keisuke Sukehara, such as Death Pyramid. Ascending skyward, Death Pyramid, it's big and pointy and grey now. Axbattler, Gain Mountain. Going up the Gain Mountain, it's tall and rocky all day now. Axbattler, Legend of Goldenaxe, Ice Cliffs. Oh, no, slippery ice cliffs and frozen now and you'll get everyone's favorite little ditty, Spooky Cave, Axbattler. Spooky Cave is spooky, Spooky Cave is strange, Spooky Cave is evil, it's so damn deranged. Now I don't want to be here anymore, but I need to find Death Adder so that I can say